May 13th, 2025. It's an extra special edition of the Oliver Macco Show. I'm here at the National Club, founded in 1874. This is a Bay Street institution, and I'm the honored guest of the GM and COO, Mr. Bill Morari. Bill, thank you so much for inviting me here today.
My pleasure. Welcome.
Thank you. I thought I'd start with a policy of the club that I really, really love. It's the no phone policy. Now, I know sometimes members might be in the breach, but what I like about that is quite simply, we live in a world where we're all stuck on our phones, and that person-to-person interaction is sorely lacking. And so this is not really a question, this is a statement. I hope the club keeps the policy because, the world needs much more of that.
100%. I mean, it's one of those policies that I think have been on even before cell phones and all that was invented. But, you come here to get away from that. You don't need to listen to somebody sitting at the table beside you on their phone. I think that's one of the things that we'll always maintain. Hey, we also realize the world changed. People live on their phones. I mean, if you have kids, you'll see that. But, and your world's on your phone. But put it down. Come here, enjoy the company, have a real conversation with a real person. That's what you come here for. And if you do need to take a phone call, we have a good place to send you to.
I love it. The club was founded in 1874. Canada, our country, was 7 years old. There's remarkable history in these walls. I thought we could begin by perhaps asking you to recap a bit of the early history and how we find ourselves here today, 150 years later.
Well, it's going to be a very thumbnail version of it, but I mean, we were founded again in 1874, 7 years after Confederation. Actually, some of the founders of the National Club were actually involved in that Charlottetown Accord when we were founded as a country. But it was really started as a club that had a political ideal where we were putting Canada first. They wanted to have different ties from the British Union and all that, and really put Canada first. And as we talked about earlier, that's basically our motto, Canada First, under our coat of arms. We had it long before any of the politicians coined that phrase. So, and we continued on as a sort of a home for this political party for 10 or 12 years. But eventually all their ideals were adopted by the Liberals or the Conservatives, and they basically had no purpose. So they disbanded as a political party base, and they continued on, though, as a business and social club. Everybody that was in the club at that time really enjoyed the company and the camaraderie, so they just, let's continue with the club as it is. And that's kind of how it's been really for the last 150 plus years now.
Remarkably, you've been here for almost 1/3 of that history. I have to point it out. 44 years, it's something to be celebrated. Yeah. It's so unusual in this day and age that someone could even stick to something for that amount of time. So my hat's off to you. 44 years, I imagine you've seen some members from when they were little kids, growing up into accomplished adults. What's it like to see that sort of growth and to have a place that you come to for that duration? And the world progresses, but within the club, certain traditions remain. And perhaps you can speak to sort of what it feels like to see that sort of growth amongst the membership.
Well, I can't account for what happened in 1874 or that, but certainly since 1981, the club is a much different club than when I started working here. And if I was asked anything about what I'm most proud of over my time here, I'd say it's been the club's ability to change, like with the times and that. When you think about it, when I started working here, for instance, this was a men's only club. That changed in the late 80s. We've had now 7 women presidents, which is something, and actually next month in June, we'll have our 8th woman president. So a lot of clubs are lagging far behind us and that, but we've adapted with the times, not only with the physical structure of the building, with policies, with the membership. It's much younger. Members are coming from different areas. So we've always been adaptive to change. And I think that's one of the reasons why we've had sustained success for so many years as well, just because of that. And it's getting some recognition as well. We've got lots of that as well.
Is there a typical member, or do you find that your membership base has also become more varied during that time?
That's a good question. Again, so early on in my career here, and by the way, I started when I was 10. I wish.
Washing dishes.
Yeah, there you go. Listen, our catchment area is really the Bay Street corridor, so downtown Toronto, the financial district. I would say 80% of our members came from sort of a 3-4 block radius of the building, worked in the banking sector, financial services industry, big insurance companies. I would say also the big audit firms like the Deloitte's and the PricewaterhouseCoopers and those firms. And when you made it to a certain level at that firm, whether you're senior VP or whatever, then the companies bought memberships for you. And that's the way it was, and it worked great for a lot of years. But then things changed. There was a lot of, and I've seen ups and downs on Bay Street. I've seen market crashes in the 80s and in the 90s. I dealt with SARS, and of course, most recently, the pandemic and that. Things have changed. People going to the office every day, all that stuff has changed. And so it's not quite the same. But what we're finding now is those big corporations, they have really fancy executive suites built in and meeting rooms and space that we have. They don't necessarily need that from the club. They might join for relationships or other reasons. But an entrepreneur, for instance, somebody in a different industry, the National Club becomes their home base. So I would say most people join for business first and foremost. But once they're into the club here, they quickly realize that it's about relationships, and they literally stay because of the friends that they make at the club. They may do business with them, or they just might make lifelong friends. And that's been a big evolution too. So it's pretty interesting dynamics. And you could have somebody that's in the window cleaning industry that cleans all these skyscrapers downtown, sitting with a banker or a broker and one of those big corporate lawyers, all sitting at the same time, having a great time sharing a bottle of wine. And that's the beauty of a place like this.
It's a crowd you might not come across if you just stick to your office and your place of work. Speaking of skyscrapers and our location, we are literally steps from King and Bay.
Yeah.
You might not know it from the surroundings. I've passed by countless times over the years. I think I've noticed the building. It's easy to also miss. It's kind of tucked back a bit from the sidewalk. And this has been the club's location, I believe, since the early 20th century, 1906, if I'm not mistaken.
I'll give you that history in a second.
I'd love to hear. There was, perhaps you can begin from earlier on. I know there's been a recent renovation. So if you could take us maybe from the earlier days up to the most recent renovation, which I think was quite extensive.
Yeah, well, just at the beginning of your question there, I mean, clubs have traditionally been known for there was a book written about it, The Art of the Low Profile. You literally are there for a purpose, and a club like this really only appeals to a certain percentage of the population, like 1%, that type of thing, which is definitely why we're not out there on the street with big flashing neon lights and all that stuff saying, hey, come to the National Club. No, that's not what we're about, right? So that's the idea. People come here, it's a little sanctuary, an oasis in the downtown space. The first clubhouse, you're sitting in the new clubhouse, by the way. We've been here since 1907. So we're going on like 118 years now. But we were originally located about 2 blocks further south down Bay Street, basically Bay and Wellington. So we imagine it's not too far from here. And they didn't own the clubhouse. It was leased from a member at the time. And their membership was growing, and they needed to have a larger facility to accommodate their membership. So they purchased a place called the Robinson House and tore it down, and they literally built this clubhouse for members. So that's only been the home of the National Club. It wasn't anything else before that. at the time, people thought, are they crazy at the National Club? Nobody has their business that far north. Now you think about it, it's only 2 blocks, but Toronto back in those days, the downtown core was to the south and to the east.
Mm.
So this was like being the equivalent of being in the suburbs. But it turned out to be a really good decision by whoever made it at the time, that we ended up right in the heart of the financial district. So that was sort of the evolution there. And over the years, we've done a lot of changes to the clubhouse and a lot of different modifications. There were a couple of tests, though, over the years. So when Robert Campo wanted to develop Scotia Plaza, which is a 70-story building that we're literally hooked up to the underground path to, they wanted to purchase the club to build their tower on our property, and we said no. But there was other things that they wanted to do, including increasing the density of their building. So back in the 80s, you were only allowed to build your building 16 times coverage of whatever the footprint was, which meant they would have only been able to build a 40-story building. Well, they wanted to build 70. So back then, you could sell your commercial air rights for money in exchange that I couldn't build commercially, or the club couldn't build commercially on our roof. But somebody could take that and add stories to their building. And a lot of clubs sold their air rights, churches sold their air rights. Mid-1980s, we sold ours for $3.5 million. And that allowed them to build the 70-story building that's there today.
Oh.
Yeah, so with that money, though, again, the club was very tired looking. It was a sad state of affairs. It needed money, and all that money was reinvested in the club. New infrastructure, heat, light, power, renovation, everything new dishes, the whole bit. And I was, myself and my predecessor who hired me, I was the assistant manager. We were the only 2 staff that worked for 3 months. Everybody else got paid 75% of the salary to be off, again, out of that money back in the day. And we basically made over the entire club. And it was quite exciting. I learned a lot at that point. And since then, we've undergone multiple renovations and changes as well, including the recent renovation to our rooftop, which the rooftop itself was first put in place 13 years ago. And they were going to put a little patio up on the roof. And I know a few other clubs did that. And they were kind of a little, I don't want to use Mickey Mouse-ish, but not of any substantive size or anything. And we thought, okay, we're going to do it. Let's do it right. So they built basically a permanent small indoor building that seated about 30 people, a deck on the front of Bay Street that overlooks Bay Street, which, by the way, when the Leafs win the Stanley Cup, it's going to be the best place to watch the parade from. And then another deck on the back, which was large. So we could accommodate over 120 people up on the rooftop.
It's an incredible space.
And we went from being a club where nobody came to in July and August. You could shoot a cannon through the club and never hit anybody, to a desirable destination. And we actually used to close after lunch in July and August because nobody was here. It just didn't make sense. Once we built that space, it became a very hopping place. And I remember looking at my assistant manager, Lori, and I said, what have we done here? Now we're going to have to work all summer.
No getting away to the cottage.
But that was a game changer for us, because with that investment actually helped us increase our business, and it actually helped attract a whole different set of members, younger members. It was a vibrant place. And so that's part of the evolution. There's been many others in between. So a couple of years ago, we actually took that original rooftop, rebuilt everything again. And what we did, though, because we realized it was seasonal, we extended the back out, new building with skylights and accordion windows that open up. So in the good weathers here, you have that outdoor feel, but we could use the space year round, and it's been a blessing for us.
The sale of the air rights, I find it, I'm a big fan of these heritage buildings.
Yeah.
So that provides me with some reassurance. And I wasn't aware of this story.
Yeah.
So that's a certain reassurance, I think, for the club and its members that you're going to be here to stay.
Yeah. Well, it is difficult to do anything at the club. I think in the 70s, when we're getting around our 100th anniversary, we actually became a designated heritage site. So you would be it's hard pressed to do anything with the building. I know in Toronto, they're very famous for saving the facades and building around it.
Facadism, sure.
Yeah. I don't know, the club, as long as we exist, is going to stay in this form. Will we do renovations and stuff to it? Possibly.
I know a good contract.
Yeah, but hey, I always say we survived 150 years, and I know we went through a lot of challenges, especially with the pandemic and that. But we'll get through it, and I suspect we'll be here a little while longer.
You mentioned the Maple Leafs celebration party when they win the Stanley Cup. Nick, by the way, invited me to the patio. I couldn't believe that we were overlooking
Yeah.
Bay Street. You'd never know. It's so neat. You'd never know walking by on Bay Street that there's something like this just above you. And I just find it so neat that there's a place like this tucked away that I didn't know exist. And I'm in real estate amongst these skyscrapers. And like you said earlier, a place that you can escape to. And it's quiet in here. You're stepping back from the madness of the street. And I also really appreciate, again, expanding on the point I made earlier about the no phone policy, the fact that you can meet here with your friends or perhaps people you haven't even met before and have this one-on-one interaction that I find really challenging to come across in the work environment or even the social environment. If you go to a typical restaurant, let's say, it's that classic scene. Everybody's on their phone. So I just kind of want to convey how much of a treasure this is. I've been invited a couple times over. I'm not quite sure why I haven't joined yet. Nick is on me about that. I make the case that I'm too busy, but I'm being slowly convinced, and I think we're going to do a little bit of a tour later on. Tonight, you have a reception. Tell me about that. What is sort of the balance between, you mentioned earlier, not trumpeting the fact that you're here, but at the same time, members don't live forever. None of us do. How do you sort of manage that member base so that it remains strong, but at the same time you maintain a certain level of discretion?
Well, I think it's important, and the hierarchy. This club is owned by the members themselves, so if it ever disbanded, proceeds would go to the membership. But it hasn't happened in 150 years. I don't think that's going to happen. One of the nice things belonging to a club like this is you can be sitting in your office across the street. It's 12:15. I know I can come over to the club at any time. I'm going to get a table in my favorite room. I'm going to be looked after, and you're not going to be in tables that are 6 inches apart with somebody on the phone or talking or whatever, and you can have a real conversation. If you want a buzz, certain areas of the club are busier than others. If you want a really quiet area, we have that for you. We actually have 50,000 square feet here. We're spread over 5 floors. We're like a bit of a boutique hotel. We have overnight accommodation, which, by the way, Princess Anne stayed with us when she was in the country, and she came up to myself and the president at the time, saying how much she enjoyed her staying at the National Club. It was her favorite spot to stay when she was in Canada for a trip. So that was quite something. And we had to greet her when she arrived and greet her when she left, and the whole bit. So it was quite interesting. But we keep a cap. We watch the membership. We have a little bit of room right now. But we monitor it closely, and if membership gets to a certain level, we put a cap on it, and we have a wait list. And that's one of the things, because the idea is to have access to the club. We do 80 club events a year. You want to be able to sign up for the Mother's Day brunch or a speaker's event or a wine event, which we have one of the best wine cellars in the city, if not the country. And you want to have access to it. But if you have too many members and you keep saying, sorry, we can't look after you, Oliver, today because we're already sold out, or there's no room in the dining room, do you mind going elsewhere? That's why we watch that stuff very closely, so members have access to it.
The other remarkable sort of feature of me having lunch here a couple of times with my friend Nick is there wasn't this loud music blaring. So I have to tell you the story about my 78-year-old dad. we're getting together for lunch on Thursday. He's dragging me out to Mississauga because there's a restaurant there that he's discovered that doesn't play loud music, because he insists that every other place he tries, he lives in the West End, but not in Mississauga, the music is playing too loud. And I'm tying the two together now, because I remember having lunch here and being able to really converse. It's the phones, but it's also the music level.
We do have music on the background, but it's not blaring. It's not loud. It's, we kind of keep it at a very nominal volume level. So you can carry on that important conversation, hear what somebody sitting across the table saying. Well, it's kind of important. All those little details. And the thing too, with a smaller membership base, the staff will get to know you very quickly. They'll know all your preferences, what you like, what you dislike, if there's an allergy, those things. I have cases where I've had members that we could tell by the look on their face when they walked in the room, oh, it's a martini day for him today, or, oh, it's a glass of wine. I can see he seems happy today. So
and I know
the
your
staff
favorites.
are that good, and they'll know that. So that's really important.
This is a great sell for the membership, because for a great sell for becoming a member, simply because even at a fine restaurant, I don't expect that kind of attention. Maybe I should, not in today's age.
Yeah, unless you're going there like on a daily basis or regularly, it's hard for them to do that, because they're dealing with hundreds of customers that walk in off the street or whatever. So we try to do our best to give personalized service, for sure.
So you mentioned earlier you've been working here since the age of 10, 44 years. You must have some stories. Can you call to mind maybe some funny stories, inspirational?
Well, a couple of things come to mind. This is on a personal note. Being the manager of the club, we have a board of directors is volunteer made up of members. So they're titans of industry in their own ways and that. And I've had the real pleasure of working with some of the smartest people in the country that I've learned so much from. Here I am growing up, I never thought I'd be in situations dealing with when they were developing the Trump Hotel next door, which, by the way, is St. Regis now. You're sitting across from the developers and you're doing negotiations and things. I could never imagine myself in that world, but it was amazing, those kind of learning experiences and just their whole approach to business and stuff. So that helped me unbelievably. I've met royalty, I've met prime ministers, presidents of countries. I never thought I'd ever be in that kind of world, but just because the National Club and the prestige of the club and the members and who they bring to there, that's pretty amazing. There are stories that I probably will write a book maybe after I retire, because one of the things you want to do is you don't last in a job for 44 years if you spill the beans on too much stuff.
Sure.
But that being said, after they pass away, it's all fair game. So one funny story that comes to mind was Pierre Trudeau, not Justin. Pierre Trudeau was here speaking, and he was coming in the front door, and one of our members had a little bit too much to drink one day and tumbled at the top of the stairs in the main dining room right down to the lobby. Pierre looked over at him and said, "Are you okay?" "I'm fine." Stepped on. "Have a good day," and just stepped over him. That member was called in by the executive committee, had a little talking to and addressing down, may have got suspended for a few days, but that kind of stuff happens. But the evolution too that I've seen that's for the positive is, again, we used to basically be a business club. Now we started doing family events and things on a Sunday. Like we just had our Mother's Day brunch. We do an event on first Sunday in December. We do something for Easter. And all of a sudden, I'm sure the founders of the club, and we used to have their pictures up on the wall in the main dining room. We still have them digitally now. They would be rolling over in their graves thinking, what the heck did you do to my club? You let women and children into the club now. But they're great, because when you join the club now, it's also it's not your company paying, it's a personal decision.
Mm-hmm.
And the families are welcome, and it's really like a 2-for-1 deal. So if you join, your wife would automatically have full access to the club and its facilities, and our 280 clubs around the world that we're affiliated. There's so many benefits, right? So those are all little things, but seeing those kids events and they bring in kangaroos and steaks, right, and different things like that, it's just like, wow, this isn't the same club I started working at. And again, it's just the people. I've made some great friends who are members and people that I work with, and I'm just very thankful to be as lucky as I am. I still, after all this time, wake up in the morning and still like going to work.
That's
And that's why I'm such a rare bird in this industry. The only thing I don't like is Toronto traffic. If you could do something about that, then it'd make it a lot easier, because my commute time's double what it used to be.
It sounds like the membership and the board, they treat you well. That's the impression I'm getting. Is that
Two-way
okay?
street for sure.
What's interesting, I find rubbing shoulders, you mentioned rubbing shoulders with highly successful, accomplished people, is that they tend to be highly inquisitive. And in fact, they may be speaking less and open to hearing your story and what you have to think about what's going on in their lives. And I find that remarkable. One might think the opposite, in fact, that you meet someone that's accomplished, they just want to go on and on about their latest venture or accomplishments. But I don't know if you find this as well, but I find as I get older, and I guess I'm exposed to more of these success stories, in fact, the inverse is true. They want to pick your brain about what you're doing and what's going on in your life. Do you find the same?
100%. I think they value my opinion.
Mhm.
Not that they always didn't, but being in the industry as long as I have, and the connections I have, literally I was past president of the Club Managers Association of Canada, so I know everybody from coast to coast. They defer to me, and that's why they pay somebody to be the general manager, COOs, or CEO of the company. Let them run the business. The board members are there to be strategic and high level, and they're really good at their roles in their businesses, but they don't know the private club industry as well as somebody like me. So they certainly value my opinion, and being here as long as I have, whenever somebody comes up with a new idea or suggestion, what do you think? I say, oh yeah, we tried that 10 years ago, or we did this before, and that didn't really work, but this worked, and that. So that's one of the good things that come with being around as long as I have. So just a little more sore in the morning when I get up. Other than that, I'm good.
You mentioned earlier something about not spilling the beans about what you might overhear or be introduced to for sake of discretion. And that reminded me of the longtime bartender. I remember reading this story from years back at Canoe.
Yeah.
And he had been there forever. And he said, I have stories that could topple empires, but the reason why they kept coming back to me to share their problems, whether it was business related or the love life, was that I never said a thing to anybody. So imagine yourself in that position as well.
Yeah,
sometimes.
100%. I mean, discretion is so important in this role. And sometimes you'll hear things that maybe you weren't supposed to hear or whatever. And it's actually in our employee handbook policy about that as well. So we're sworn to keeping things quiet or whatever. And that's very important. And, there's a code of conduct and all that sort of stuff. So you come here, the one thing I'd hate to think, imagine some of the deals that were done, like the Eaton's family, they were members, and all the big people in Toronto at the time, they would be doing deals, and they'd have a few drinks back in the old days, maybe a cigar indoors, which you could do back then. And then they'd have a handshake on the stairs, and the deal was done. It's a lot different now, for sure. But that's just the way it was. And this, I will leave the lawyers to do the details. But as far as I'm concerned, a deal is a deal, and it's done. But you might have heard, some of the aspects of things, and you have to be very discreet about that stuff. So it's important.
You mentioned earlier that there are some openings for new members. There's a reception this evening. So anyone watching, if they did want to inquire, is there, number one, I've answered my own question, there is some space, but is there some sort of criteria to meet?
Well, generally speaking, you're invited by an existing member. So in your case, Nick, invite you to come and check it out.
Mhm.
That's the normal way, but today is a different world. We were talking earlier about social media and stuff like that. We do get online inquiries and stuff like that. What we've done, though, is simplify the membership process. You still have to meet at least 2 current directors. If you have a proposer and a seconder, that's fine.
Mhm.
But if you don't, we can help facilitate that. And, we do vet our membership as well. And then it's approved by the board of directors to get in. In the early days, you used to have a proposer, a seconder, 5 reference letters from existing members, and then still meet 2 directors. So you had to meet 9 or 10 people before they'd even consider you getting in. And that really tied hands when people in today's world, nobody's patient anymore, right? People want
Right.
things now. That's just the way it is. So if you say, well, it's going to take 6 months or whatever, they might lose interest and move on to something else. So we simplified that process a number of years ago. There's a quick story I'll tell you. There was a book written by Peter C. Newman called The Canadian Establishment many years ago. And he used to be a banker right across the road from us. And he ended up, not Peter C. Newman, but Bob McIntosh was his name. And he eventually became head of the Canadian Bankers Association. But he was still junior at the bank. But he had an application in to get into the club. And we're talking in the 60s, late 60s, early 70s. And at the time, we used to put our flag on the rooftop. And every time the flag was at half staff, his quote that he gave Peter C. Newman in this book was, I knew I was one step closer to getting into the national club because somebody died. But it meant the wait list was getting a little shorter. They're going to admit another member.
Okay.
But that's kind of the heyday of these kind of clubs for sure.
Mhm. I think it's wonderful that my hats go off to you, the club members, the board, and everyone along the way for A, not selling out,
Yeah.
B, changing with the times, but at the same time maintaining a certain level of tradition and decorum. I find it's, as I age, it's so sorely lacking. I'm now the angry old person that perhaps my dad has been for a while, in a good way. And walking through here, it's refreshing. I was greeted warmly. I was, the elevator ride up, which lasts maybe 15, 20 seconds. We're only on the 3rd floor. I got to meet a member. He introduced himself. And something that I know wouldn't happen, or at least would be very unlikely to happen in the outside world. So my 3rd time here, it's a really warm sense. It's not stifling in any sense. I love the tradition of the space. And so I wanted to say thank you. I know you had a busy afternoon ahead, so thank you for your time. And thank you to the National Club, because this is a real jewel for the city and I think for the country as well.
Good. Well, thank you. It's been a real pleasure sitting down and chatting with you. And like I said, the club's been around for a long time. We got the best of both worlds here. We have heritage building with great wood paneled rooms and that, and then you go upstairs and you got sort of this more contemporary space. So I think we've adapted quite well, and I suspect we'll be around for another 150 years. So thank you.
Cheers to that, and cheers to being a good sport, because you walked into the room today. I did play a little bit of a trick, or at least I wasn't as clear as I could be. You thought this would be audio only.
I did.
You didn't put up any fuss.
I would have got my hair cut, like I said.
We saw the equipment, and we'll take care of any hair imperfections in the post.
Perfect. Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
That was wonderful. Good. Well, nice chatting with you. I really did enjoy that. That was good.